Welcome to week 2. This is not law school, it's not a legal class, but we need to learn a little bit about the law, and more specifically, how legal standards direct our actions in strategic communication. We'll start with our text in chapter 1. Our author quotes, "Law is about what people must do, while ethics is about what people should do." In other words, do the right thing for the right reasons. Our author also describes how there are 4 principles fundamental to the application of marketplace theory in law. And they describe how these may be useful in establishing ethical baselines for responsible advocacy in public relations. A lot of words. Essentially, try to remember access, process, truth, and disclosure. You can read more of that on your own, but those are the highlights to kind of help you in the first chapter of our text. One of our articles this week is from Key and Kim, and they describe the importance of utility, or the importance and utility of establishing ethical statements, or sometimes referred to as ethic statements. This process helps clarify objectives, norms, values, and they also help organizations achieve their business goals. They found that there's a positive correlation between ethics statements and ethical behaviors. Obviously, those lead to your business goals. Use this opportunity to think about in your own organization, and if you've ever helped develop an ethics statement, how that may have helped you with some introspection, personally, professionally, and organizationally. All right. Another article this week is Key, Choi, and Lee. Their research was designed to assess the effectiveness of public relations firms' ethics statements in decreasing the incidence of malpractice. So it's a very practical way to see how an ethics statement influences the employees or members of an organization. And obviously, we want to minimize any incidents of malpractice. And so if we can learn through study, through research, that an ethics statement can help with that, that's something that is of interest to us as researchers, and more importantly as practitioners of public relations and strategic communication. The study used 4 scenarios that included a situation in which a person feels pressure to take actions that are not consistent with what he or she feels is right. Some of you may have been put in that position before, and so it'd be kind of interesting to reflect upon your memories in terms of how that made you feel and how it compares with research by Key, Choi, and Lee. Finally, that research revealed this quote that says, "Practitioners working in a firm with an ethics statement and who had also learned about the contents of the ethics statement were more likely to engage in more ethical practices." Now, this may make common sense, but it's good to have solid research to back up that common sense. So if you're involved in helping develop an ethics statement, or as a public affairs person or public relations person, perhaps reviewing an ethics statement, think about how research has shown that that impact is very, very real. Finally, our reading from Bowen talked about a practical model for ethical decision-making in issues management and public relations. Bowen describes how issues management frequently handles ethical dilemmas through the identification of issues, research, analysis, and the making of organizational-wide policy. This research examined processes at 2 global pharmaceutical firms, and they pose a practical model for ethical decision-making based on the issues management process used in those organizations. So kind of taking those organizations and then applying them through the research. You might be able to do the same thing by comparing and contrasting what happens in your organization with those that Bowen studied. Bowen also revealed that as the ethical conscience of the organization, public relations practitioners should be well versed in both moral philosophy and ethics. For those of you with public relations background, you may or may not have known, but often you are the ethical conscience of the organization. Typically, 2 sides of the same coin are public relations or director of communications or whatever you want to call them, and then the legal advisor. Those two serve together, typically offering advice to senior leaders within an organization. Before I leave, I will point out one figure that's on page 93 of the Bowen article. There's a good model there of ethical issues management. See if you can apply that model to your own experience or perhaps your own organization where you currently serve. Well, that's it for now. I'll remind you every week, stay ahead with your assignments, stay engaged in the discussion board, and most importantly, enjoy this time of learning.